Speaking of world champions, Yhancy, I will let you take the stage here. I have titled this section Ferrari versus Vettel.
That is accurate. That is very, very accurate.
So
that is very accurate.
Take it away, my friend.
Hold on, Wells. By the way, these graphics that you're showing us, this is awesome. Thank you for doing this. Engineers.
I'm giving up my secrets here, but Yhancy, take it away.
Yeah, listen. I said it last week that as much as Vettel will say in the media that him and Ferrari are not at odds, it clearly spilled over last race and it clearly spilled over this race. He doesn't feel like they're on his side, and you can tell it to the team radio. Here's the thing. The one thing I don't think it's all Ferrari's fault. I think at some point you have to perform, and we don't know exactly what are the inner workings of how all of this is going down. But it doesn't seem like Vettel is driving inspired, and he seems to be blaming everybody around him. And then by you doing that, it seems like Ferrari's over it, and they just are not putting him on good strategies during the race. They just don't care. I just don't get why he obviously didn't qualify in the top 10, so he has a choice of tire at the beginning.
Yes.
Right, so he starts on the mediums. So we all thought the logical choice would be, obviously, if you want to finish up higher, which Ferrari has done with Leclerc, you got to take an alternate strategy, a la Haas in the first few races, right? Or I think it was in Hungary. So we thought, all right, he's on the medium tires, so that means that he can go a little bit longer, and put him on an alternate strategy so he can go a little bit longer, and then put him on a faster tire to the end, and maybe he can overtake and get a higher position. Instead, they put him around the same time as they put him, I think, the same lap as Leclerc, lap 29. They put Leclerc on new mediums, and they put Vettel on used softs, which just doesn't make any sense to me. Why are you going to put him on a tire that cannot go the entire race? Actually, he did. He actually pulled it off.
At the time, they were not planning a one-stopper, just to be clear on that.
Yeah, yes. It was one of those things where they wanted to do a two-stopper. And he actually made it work somehow, but he made it work because he literally had to negotiate with the pit wall, as in like, okay, do I push? Do I not push? I think the radio message was, he said, all right, how's, no, he was like, what's my pace? He said, what's my pace? They were like, all right, it's okay. And then they come back to him a few laps later and said, you think we can do a one stop? He said, dude, and I'm paraphrasing here. He said, here it is. For F's sake, I asked you this before. And I get his frustration because he pushed for 10 laps. So if he's pushing, that means that the tires are gonna go faster. So he's not saving the tires till the end. And then he asked his engineers to do some calculations there. Wells will probably understand this better. and then he said, all right, they got the calculations back to him. He said, all right, yeah, I think I can do it. But he basically did what Lewis Hamilton did. He made up his own strategy and he went with it. The engineers literally had nothing to do with this. And, at that point, you can see that the engineers are not earning their money on either Mercedes or Ferrari.
So here's going to be my question. I know it's leading. Who's at fault, Ferrari or Vettel?
It's Ferrari.
And it looks like from the outside in, it looks like it's Ferrari. But listen, when a relationship goes bad, I always say it's on both sides. So you can see that Vettel is just not into it, man. And he's just trying to finish off the season. So you don't know who's he. It seems like him and Bernardo are not on the same page because they're going back and forth in the media. And when you do that, it's just like you just start burning bridges. So, at some point, you got to be professionals about it. I can't tell you who is who, but I'm not going to put all the blame on Ferrari.
I mean, on this race, yes, it's Ferrari's fault. He did ask earlier in the race, like pretty much what's the strategy? What are we doing? Yeah. Obviously didn't. So then they let him out to dry. They're like, oh, can you go to the end with this? Like, come on, dude. I just freaking asked you this a couple of laps ago.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Are we sleeping or something? I think the communication is off there. And they just have, they're in a bad relationship right now.
Something's off, man. Something's off. And they'll there's a lot of talk of Vettel not even finishing the season. I think he will, just because, at the end of the day, Vettel is a stand-up guy. He's a very professional person. And he'll drive that car until the end of the season. But yeah, it doesn't look good, man. And it's spilling out on team radio. The only reason it's not spilling out into the media is because Vettel's holding his tongue. But
so I think
it's pretty ugly right now.
I think it's where you said that it when a relationship goes bad, it just goes bad. And I don't think that I kind of did a little bit of an analysis, and I don't think that it's any one side. I think it's just these guys not communicating. So I'm going to call split one the time from lap 1 to lap 12, right? And split 2 is 12 to 17. 12 to 17 is notable. Here's why. Kvyat was all over the back of Vettel, forcing him to go much faster and to use up more tires. And then from there, I'll go from, I guess, 18 to when they pitted to 28. So in comparing the times for Vettel and Leclerc, we see that Leclerc's times are faster at the start, and then they draw even during that time where Kvyat and Vettel are battling. And then what we see is that all of a sudden, Vettel starts going much slower, which is, it's kind of in line with where his tires are supposed to be, a little slower, but they're supposed to last longer. If you compare, for example, Ricciardo and Ocon, they also started on fresh mediums because they did not qualify in the top 10. So Ocon and Ricciardo, their start to their race was slower than where Vettel was. Obviously, the first couple of laps is whatever. In that middle section where Vettel was battling Kvyat, Ricciardo was kind of just chilling, doing his thing. Same as Ocon, but where you start to see Ocon go a little faster is towards the end of that where he's battling with Kimi, but he manages to maintain his tires and he slips back into a slower time, but he extends the tires. I think that part of the problem there was the engineers at Ferrari should have said, yo, you have life in these tires. You need to figure it out. You need to make these things last, because it doesn't look like his times are much different in stint 1 from Ricciardo and from Ocon. He is maybe a half second slower per lap than Ricciardo, but he's still going faster than Ocon, and they both managed to take their tires out to lap 34. From there, what you see is in lap 45, you start to see the talk of the rain in the race. And I think that, again, it's just miscommunication. They didn't tell him, or they may have talked and said, hey, there's rain coming. Actually, I think they did. There's rain coming. So then Vettel.
They said by lap 50.
So you could see, and I'm pointing it out to these guys on the screen, his lap times go from 124.115 to 122.707. So he's going faster and faster. Lap 48, that's where he calls in and he says, hey, what's my pace? And then all of a sudden he starts to slow down when they say to him, we'll get back to you, or they don't get back to him. And then I think that the problem with Ferrari was they didn't think about it until Mercedes pitted. And then they were like, oh, you know what? Maybe the rain will hold off. Let's tell him to stay out there on those old tires. And then you can see that he starts going much slower, much more of a conservative race. But at that point, the damage is done, where he could have had a much better race.
He pushed too hard at the beginning of that.
Well, they forced him to do that. Yeah, they forced him to do that.
They didn't force him. They did not talk. He said,
yeah, exactly.
They said the rain is potentially coming. So if it's me, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go onto Inters, so I'm gonna kill these tires.
They gave each other the silent
exactly.
Maybe at the pre-race meeting that the team had, they told him, hey, we will do 3 stops or 2 stops.
Who sleeps on the couch?
Vettel, of course. Come on. Vettel's on his way out. He's his stuff is gonna be packed up and left outside the door.
I think Ferrari was just too busy watching the local news, the local weather.
They have their
instead
radar.
of watching the radar. Yeah, they were too busy watching the local weather.
Come on, we all
rain, whatever. But
we all were hoping that it was gonna rain.
Well, that was what was going to wake up the race. If it rained,
it was going to wake up.
Going to wake up. There you go.
No, but like I said, it's just a miscommunication thing. The first stint, they should have told him, "Yo, you're staying out on these tires. I don't care," because he was the one that said, "I don't feel good on these tires. I want to come in," and they pitted him on lap 29, and then from then on, there was just terrible communication. They didn't really do what they needed to do.
He needed to do 6 more laps, like Ricardo did.
Ferrari they basically created a new department for new performance or something like that. What they need to do is literally blow up that strategy department and start a new one because it's, I don't know, man. But like I said, I mean, the situation's gotten so ugly with Vettel, but it goes both ways. But Ferrari doesn't have that.
So, anything else to say on Vettel? They need to figure something out because he is still a talented driver, and you could tell he is checked into the race. He's there. He's making the calls that he needs to make.
I just listen. There's no reason for Ferrari to not give Vettel everything that he needs to score points because they need both cars to score points. It means money. It's just as usual. Ferrari is very inconsistent with their strategy calls. One race is good, one race is not, or in some cases, it's good for one driver and it's bad for the other. They need to get their ish together.
Hey guys, this is Wellington, 1/3 of the Jump to Start Racing podcast crew. I want to remind you to destroy that like button for the YouTube algorithm and to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with our latest content. I also want to let you know that we're active on both Twitter and Instagram. For both platforms, the handle is @JumpTheStartF1. And of course, you can find us on your favorite podcast platform, Jump to Start Racing Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.